Today, Judge Bachman has affirmed our position that Johnson & Johnson, motivated by greed and avarice, is responsible for the opioid epidemic in our state. Johnson & Johnson will finally be held accountable for thousands of deaths and addiction caused by their activities. Throughout the trial, our team proved what we have alleged all along, that the company used pseudoscience and misleading information that downplayed the risks of opioids, leading to the worst man-made public nuisance our state and this country has ever seen, the opioid crisis. As a result, when opioid sales in Oklahoma began to skyrocket, the death toll from unintentional prescription drug-related overdoses mounted, leaving in its wake broken homes, families, and communities. We showed how the company repeatedly ignored warnings by the federal government and its own scientific advisors about the dangers of its drugs and the risks of marketing its products in the way it did. The company promoted its products through unbranded campaigns by funding front groups and many patient groups meant to look like grassroots organizations that spread the company's misinformation. We have proven that Johnson & Johnson built its billion-dollar brand out of greed and on the backs of pain and suffering of innocent people. Although we showed the way Johnson & Johnson created the epidemic, we also showed the brilliant work of those in the state who've been serving on the front lines. These are individuals at agencies like the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, led by Commissioner Terry White, Tom Bates and his team at the Department of Health, and at the OSU Center for Wellness and Recovery, led by Drs. Casey Schrum, Jason Beeman, and Julie Croft. These people I just named and the countless others who I didn't are heroes. It is safe to say that without them, there would be thousands more dead, and even more would still be in the clutches of addiction. At this trial, we heard from national experts like Dr. Andrew Kolodny, who is regarded as the nation's foremost expert on the opioid epidemic in the U.S. He demonstrated how Johnson & Johnson took data out of context with respect to their branded opioids, minimized safety issues related to those opioids, omitted material information related to the safety of their opioids, and made comparative efficiency claims about their opioids without substantial evidence. And possibly the most significant and heart-rending part of our trial was when we gave the world a glimpse of what victims of the epidemic look like. Christy Hughes and John McGregor nearly lost everything to their addictions, and they were the lucky ones. They lived to tell their stories. Because in our state there are countless families, like the family of OU football star Austin Box. His parents, Craig and Gail, go to bed every night and wake up every morning to the insufferable reality of knowing they will never see their beautiful son, Austin, again. And because Johnson & Johnson targeted pregnant women in our state, we also heard from the executive director of Pepper's Ranch, Tanya Ratcliffe, who discussed what it's like caring for babies born with an addiction to opioids. We saw an actual video of a newborn shaking uncontrollably as it suffered from the effects of neonatal abstinence syndrome. From the minute these babies draw their first breath, their lives are negatively impacted and perhaps will never be the same. Regrettably, we can't change the past. We can never bring back those who lost their lives because Johnson & Johnson executives made the calculated and cold-blooded decision that they were going to produce a mutant strain of poppy, corner the market, and supply massive amounts of the active ingredients for other companies to manufacture opioids around the nation and in Oklahoma. The family members who still struggle with the loss of a loved one will remain the victims devastated by this corporate greed forever. I know personally, and have met with and spoken to families of those whose loved ones have been erased by an opioid overdose. Words will never be enough to take their pain away. I do, however, hope that today Judge Bachman's decision will provide some solace to the thousands of families who have tragically lost a loved one due to an opioid overdose. And today should also inspire a sense of optimism to those struggling with an opioid addiction, because we are committed to getting you the help you need to reclaim your life and your future. It has taken over 2 years for us to get here. There have no doubt been some bumps along the way. We suffered through attacks and obstacles, moments of trepidation and worry, but also moments of hope, and today, great triumph. Through it all, this incredible team has stuck together. And I want to say it took tremendous courage from this team of highly skilled attorneys. These are attorneys who've suffered greatly, not just during this case, being away from their families and not taking on other work, but many on this team have lost loved ones to addiction at the hand of these deadly drugs. They know firsthand the anguish of burying a family member who they first had to watch spiral into despair. Judge Mike Burridge, his law partner Reggie Witten, and everyone at Witten Burridge, Brad Beckworth and his team at Nix Patterson, and also from my office, First Assistant Don Cash, General Counsel Abby Dilsaver, the many assistant AGs, paralegals, and support staff, put in just as much time and effort as everybody who was in court these last 7 weeks. We persevered. We did so because we knew that in the end, we were going to be on the right side of history. We will look back on this dark period and know that we stood up for Oklahomans to take on Goliath. It has not been easy, but it has been well worth it. Finally, just as we've said several times at different stages of this case, when Johnson & Johnson pulled out all stops to try to derail and stall the case, we appreciate Judge Bachman's wisdom and openness. He clearly saw through all the company's desperate acts to delay justice for Oklahomans. In closing, what we showed during our 7-week trial and what Judge Bachman confirmed today is what we know now for certain. Johnson & Johnson was the kingpin behind the nation's ongoing opioid crisis.